slugging that around. Here, sit over here. So it should be sad. Okay, so I'm just going to get it quick so I can't quite come through it. Yeah. Slug. Okay. Oh, we're done. Good.
Oh no, I'm done.
Yep. Good?
Yep.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. I affirm the resolution resolved. In the United States, reporters ought to have the right to protect the identity of confidential sources. I have reminded supplied by the court of the resolution stands to minimize suppression for 3 reasons. 1. Any true claim is epistemic. Suspect. Usually a higher obligation of rejecting versus include voice can be incorporated or dislodged. Go away. Ethics means possibility given based on knowledge and experience. Too much known about the vulnerability of values, limitations, rationality makes such complexity. There are many inequalities of wealth and power leading to structural social business. Social demands recognition need to act in a way that minimize the effects of oppression rather than adding to them through neglect. What matters is the possibility of dialogue. We have to act in the anti-oppressive way itself and endless search for ethical values which we continually learn from each other, especially from the other who is socially and culturally different. 2. Validating abstract philosophy for issues and questions is nonsensical. It's just a way to avoid confronting oppression. Let's do to 89. View the world from the standpoint of best abstraction, attachment, or ways out of the discomfort of direct confrontation with the ugliness of oppression. Abstraction allows us to discuss liberty, property, and rights, no connection with those concepts mean real people's life. Nature, intellectual training, values, abstraction, denigrates detail. I talk about meaning can mask racism, sexist, ugliness. 3. Debate should deal with real consequence. Ideal theories ignore the concrete nature of the world, legitimize oppression. 14. Despite pronouncement of debate as pointing to real consequences, many discussions are fixed to a paradigm which sees the adjudication of material disparities and socioeconomic realities, the conquest of one ideal theory over another. Ethics deals by definition with normative issues. Conceptual chasm between universal ethical action problems in the world and how we frame such problems theoretically is the most obvious call from anti-ethical paradigms, and such insists on the actual as the base of what can be considered normatively. For any empirical phenomenon and ideals or representation, one has to abstract. This gap currents any real discussions about the concrete nature of oppression. Our attempts to situate social disparity cannot simply appeal to the actualization of social phenomena. We cannot suggest various complexities of social problems are totalizable by anyone instead of theories from an ideological frame, or notions of Afro-pessimism, or the like. This awareness does not command us to only do X, but do X and other ideas which complement material conditions, only neglecting to do X in order to remedy or cast wayness among our ideological tendencies. Politics. Advantage 1 is government accountability. Confidential sources keep exposing abuse of power. Henman 5. Some of the country's most significant political stories that come to light through the efforts of confidential sources. The Pentagon Papers, Watergate, how the FBI surreptitious entry program is sitting in the U.S. Senate using its authority to Iran Contra armed for hostages. The Abu Ghraib prison scandal, the Enron. Reports are also rely on confidential sources to investigate important stories outside the political arena. The Enron and accounting fraud scandals, secret companies suppress information regarding the health risks of tobacco. Reports may not have been able to provide the public with these kinds of groundbreaking stories, but the ability to promise confidentiality to their sources. And confidential sources, the only effective way to effectively learn about government wrongdoing, more in 17. Given how subservient the federal judiciary is to government secrecy, it's not hyperbole to describe unauthorized leaks as the only avenue remaining for learning what the U.S. government does, particularly the journal/whistleblower, bad acts journal/whistleblower collaboration is fraught with dangers. Retaliation from authorities can come in many forms, from isolation to physical assault. 69% of whistleblowers lost their jobs or were forced to retire, and 64% are blacklisted from getting another position in the same field. Should laws that protect the journalists are uneven across the country and maintains the sources and anonymity even not protected legally. And suppression of the media allows for repression prevents protection of other rights, as used in 96. In the absence of a free media, the House protect other rights, including the right to government, draw a cloak of secrecy over the action that massive human rights violations take place. Right to freedom of expression must be considered the first indication of government's intention apart from democratic principles is control of information by means of gagging the media. Government to capture the media to fashion them into instruments of propaganda for war and genocide. Advantage 2 is security state. Whistleblowers need to hold the government accountable, especially for national security issues. Confidentiality 14. Leads play an essential role in checking executive power and informing the American public about the government's policies and programs. The administration state enables the executive execution of many laws in the dark. The executive can exercise tight control over national security information. The executive has the power to keep information from Congress. Leads have played an important role in informing Congress about what its code branch of government is doing, such as the NSA's wireless wiretapping program or the CIA's coercive interrogation program. Since the public does not know what the government is doing, accountability is impossible without proper public debate. Government officials are more likely to adopt ill-conceived programs and policies. So taking government action to oversight may also make government officials more reluctant to engage in wrongdoing in the first place. And Whistleblowers are cases standing debate about security policies, otherwise the government keeps process in the name of security, Code 15. The only practical way to expand protection of journalism would be a federal shield law. Americans working in the national security state who dissent through cooperation with journalists are objecting to secret practices of the national security state regarded as unjust rush to transform the United States from an open society to a walled fortress has left little room for serious public debate. Security always wins. Sources have helped to keep that debate alive. And this crushes democracy and leads to domination overseas through endless wars. Element part 16. The U.S. is now in a state of permanent war in at least 6 countries, the Middle East and Africa. These are all purely presidential conflicts. Congress no longer has a real role in American war making. Police across the country increasingly have the local military units supplied by the Pentagon with weaponry directly off battlefields. Military surveillance drones are now regulating American skies. The president now commands a drone force that regularly carries on assassinations, even against to assistance without the say-so of anyone outside the White House. The president presides over full-scale secret military special operations command, 70,000 elite troops deployed on executive missions across the planet. U.S. intelligence has set up a global surveillance state that would have shaved its towering powers of the previous century. Fear has been the pretext for building a security state into an edifice of unavailable proportions. Secrecy is spread across the government. Americans know ever less about their government does. The Constitution of the United States being rewritten and amended secrecy, and this way our elections became elaborate spectacles. Democracy was set tried. Now solvency. Fair disclosure empirically caused a chilling effect, but a shield law solves Jones 09. Data demonstrates that threat of subpoenas alter behaviors in newsrooms of all sizes. Data suggests a shield law can go a substantial distance, alleviating newsrooms' concerns. The recent wave of losing cases led to a nationwide shield. The absence of clarity of federal protection is a source of much concern. A federal legislative shield could change the tenor of legal environment, eliminate the costs experienced by those who have state-level protections, does not provide fully effective prophylaxis. Reports of unnecessary subpoenas suggest newsrooms are being made instruments of collection of publicly available material. Many subpoenas becoming our subpoena of first resort. Newsroom leaders report that willingness of sources speak on the condition of confidentiality is waning, and the atmosphere that's formed news gathering is being poisoned by the subpoena threat. And even if there's not a chilling effect, the resource they can find subpoenas but otherwise be mitigated. Shield law decrease the availability of resources for news gathering, especially among smaller reporters. Jones 2. The lack of uniformity and protection from subpoenas on a state and federal level may be diminishing the effectiveness of state shield laws. One cost of subpoenas diversion they create from the news. The sheer bulk of subpoenas received makes for regular disruptions, missing editorial meetings. The wave of high-profile cases involves staggering legal bills and institutional commitments. Resources are flowing at exponentially greater amounts. Small organizations are feeling vulnerable and altering the way they do business. Existence of reporters public may be most critically important for members of small news organizations because they lack a resource. Organizations are being nibbled to death with subpoenas, so they go for the low-hanging fruit rather than investigative journalists. Fines create deterrents to high-profile reporting because even journalists willing to go to jail keeping confidentiality cannot weather direct financial consequences. So you basically just cut the page part.
The last part?
Yes, cut the last part.
Do you defend an absolute privilege?
An absolute, so like protections for.
Yeah, so like under no circumstances there can be exception.
Sure, there's no exceptions in the act.
Okay, so you defend an absolute privilege.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your definition of reporter?
Sure. So I can pull up a card for this if you want, but roughly the definition just operates on something that's been articulated by various organizations as defining acts of reporting rather than reporters themselves. So they conceptualize this as like,
okay, so
if at the outset,
like a procedure-based definition.
Yeah, like some state shield laws. I can quote Kansas's later.
Okay. So on the first advantage more card, so confidentiality exposed wrongdoing. If all of these are happening in the status quo, why do we need the app?
Sure. So the affirmative argument is that even though there is some disclosure currently, it is not the case that there are cases we don't know about, i.e. some sources are still deterred from coming forward, but we don't know about them because of the chilling effect. I think another important point, which is just specific to the Pentagon papers, is that we almost would have needed a confidential reporter's privilege. It just happened that the government did comply with due process.
On the second advantage of security state, so what if the whistleblowers are exposing national security secrets that are seen by the terrorists?
So you need to give an example of one that actually harmed us. All the significant examples I can think of off the top of my head for whistleblowing have usually not led to harm.
Why doesn't your logic apply to this? How do you, your logic of how, how we don't know if there are more leakers out there? Why doesn't that logic apply here?
Well, because in the first case, it's a case of a confidential source failing to come forward. Whereas in the second, so like the empirical evidence does give some indication of this because it's like surveys of reporters and sources. But
So,
in the second case of whether there's
that's fine.
security
So
harms,
like your framework structural violence. So how does overseas war like lay under this framework?
well, I mean, I think like it's safe to say the Vietnam War, like engaging in extrajudicial killings, or in general just like causing suffering in a way that is not minimizing of suffering, is bad. That would be my feelings.
Okay.
Because also like the wording was minimizing oppression, so if there's less of a structural claim that's required for it has to be anyways.
Is flag strike okay? Who's the agent of the resolution?
Well, I mean,
Like who's enforcing this?
I'll defend the federal shield law, so I guess
Okay.
Congress who makes it. I don't think it's an essential for the resolution.
Okay, the one's split.
Oh. Oh. There are two parts again extended. Zero times extended again. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
It's just it's just Y and C, then a disstat, a counterplan, and case terms.
Okay, cool. I'm good.
The end of thought is the production of belief in the resolution of doubt. This requires constant revision of our beliefs through an experimental methodology. Haha. Truth is opinion on which the community agrees. As the effect of inquiry, truth is based on empirical science. Any belief remains secure until the growth of our experience that gave us awakens thought. We're upon a search for belief, which means that the mentor of our experience commences the irritation of doubt. Is not the reason for the struggle to attain belief. The struggle to attain belief is called inquiry. It follows that the sole objective of inquiry is to settle belief. Insistence on experimental method is implied that there is approximate truth, there is reality which we cannot know but just approach the knowledge of this, because reality is perfect, in the perfect and complete sense, is something which is constituted by an event indefinitely future. If truth is approximate, then inquiry is continuous. This view gives place to philippilism, which insists on there no belief can be regarded as finally verifiable beyond question. Hence, investigation is in the process of constant revision, which leads to progress. And each injustice is particular rather than something to be generalized. Papa 16. Empirical inquiries about injustice must return to the concrete problems for testing. In reaching a diagnosis, the doctor relies on background knowledge, but a good doctor never forgets individuality of a particular problem. Similarly, the philosophy of inquiry about an injustice brings forth general knowledge to an inquiry into the causes of injustice. But it is all in service inquiry about the singularity of each injustice suffered in a situation. Diagnosis of causes that are due to systematic structural features. This requires an aspect of the concrete experience of injustice making problematic situations of injustice are methodological commitment as a starting point rather than diagnosis is imperative for non-ideal theories. Problems cannot be understood and ameliorated through simple and theoretical explanations. Thus, the standard is consistency with pragmatic decision procedure. Impact calc. A, this is not util. It's a question of following a certain procedure, not maximizing ends. B, pragmatism is not just an ethical theory, but a theory of truth. It proposes a method for deciding what constitutes as the legitimate justification. Thus, pragmatic theory constrains all modes of decision making. Condition 1, the absolutism precludes case-by-case balancing of public interest. There is a balancing test available to reporters. This test strikes a balance between freedom of the press and obligation to give relevant testimony with respect to criminal conduct. The First Amendment would be protected on a case-by-case basis. The absolutism precludes case. Just got that. And then, moving on to the dissent. Global terrorism declining due to surveillance, but risks remain. Taylor. The 2017 was the third year the terror had dropped. To 2016, it looks to be lower. It may be counterintelligence. It was thanks to extremist groups that 2014 became such a remarkable year for terrorism. Market warned that there may be a surging attacks in Europe as Islamic State fighters return from Middle East. And anonymity of the press undermines the fight against terrorism by exposing government operations, undermining intel gathering, and creating an extra burden on the executive. Schoenfeld, 14. As Shield is fraught with serious problems, it would undermine the government's ability to provide defense of citing freedom and security. It places professional needs of reporters about crime. We cannot seriously take the notion that it is better to write about crime than to do something about it. A Shield law would place it above the needs to fight crime. Anonymous sources give journalists information about wiretapping, detention facilities, monitoring of terrorist funds and operations. The flow of sensitive classified information has only intensified, bringing us leaks about ultra-sensitive matters as Iran, the CIA, Mole, and Al-Qaeda, and access to the testing schedule of North Korea nuclear. The press does not enjoy some sort of right to penetrate the inner workings of governments. The story as a threat to the United States' effort to prevent Iran from the nuclear attack would inflict imminent danger. Strong intelligence gathering discourages initiation of attacks. But Pittinger 14, the threat was greater today than before 9/11. With terrorists stronger, more sophisticated, and more training camps, as the U.S. our efforts are primary and essential for security around the world must have our intelligence. Terrorists relate that worldwide double. Vigilance and strength have deterred our enemies. We must take all available to counter their sophisticated operations. Then cut the last part, and then moving on to counterplan. Do the plan except when disclosure of the identity is necessary to prevent threats to national security. Separate Sting 6. A federal entity may not compel unless the court determines by clear and convincing evidence that the party has unsuccessfully attempted to obtain such testimony from all persons from which such testimony could reasonably obtain. There are reasonable grounds to believe that a crime has occurred. The testimony is essential to an investigation or defense. In any matter in which the testimony could reveal the identity of the source of information, it could reasonably be expected to lead to the discovery of the identity of such a source. Disclosure of the identity is necessary to prevent actual harm to national security. A harm could clearly outweigh the public interest in protecting the free flow of information. So obviously, advocate inspector do the ethics of Americans can see how essential free media to democracy protect the relationship between journalists and sources to whom journalists promise confidentiality. Attorney generals urge the Supreme Court to recognize federal reforms privilege. The court should compel disclosures in cases involving acts of terrorism, exigent circumstances related to classified information that undermine national security. Compel disclosure if a journalist commits a crime or is an eyewitness to a crime. And then moving on to the case. On the clipboard card, how we're talking about how oppression is that we need to include voices in our moral circle. Pragmatism is better able to resolve injustice than vague criticism of oppression. The lesson pragmatism provides for non-ideal theory today is that it must be careful to not re-edify any injustice as some single historical force. Pragmatism welcomes the wisdom of non-ideal theories that are historically grounded on actual injustice, but it issues a warning about how they should be implemented. For pragmatism, the principle that nothing more than historically grounded tools to use in present problematic situations. Pragmatism presents a very demanding methodological prescription to non-ideal theory. So, Prag controls internal links to this framework because the best way we can mitigate oppression is through experimenting is to look at the oppression on a case-by-case basis and experimenting with pragmatism. And then moving on to the first advantage, government accountability. So, as my point of defense of journalists on a procedure definition, so on the Sonntag card talking about how suppression of media is bad. Federal shield laws will lead to journalist licensing, which turns the case Appellate 8. A federal reporter's privilege would create a danger of under regulation of media of decisions required to define reporters' privilege. Legislation regulates privilege holders. Enacting a federal reporter's privilege would open a Pandora's box to increase federal media regulation. Continued congressional intervention would bring further regulation. State legislature without authority to impose regulations. Yeah, so coming part, and this essentially says that if we do the plan, like if so-called government just license the journalists, it doesn't solve anything. And then moving on to second advantage, so this links into terrorism. This has talking about, because if the whistleblowers were not actually do anything besides expose our national security secrets, and the counter plan definitely solves for this, because by making such an exception, we would no longer have any national security threats. Do you want to delete what I do? Yeah.
Just like to double check. So the only term you read on case was the licensure argument?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then, now for the rest of it. So, on the framework argument, you argue that pragmatism is required for understanding truth claims. Why can't we separate how we understand truth claims and the normative implications of those truth claims? Like, why can't we adopt the pragmatism theory of truth
yeah, that's fine.
and
So,
the app framework?
I'm saying that pragmatism is both. It's both an epistemological claim about how we should understand truth, and it's both a normative claim about how we should deal with morality.
But why couldn't those be separated? So, for example, why couldn't we adopt a theory of truth that is like incrementalism?
Okay, because I think
but then
morality is based on how we understand truth. So if we understand truth as something that's not definite and can only be indefinitely approximated by, then there's no reason why we should have an absolute moral theory.
Okay, so the moral theory should be open to revision as well, basically.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so then, is there any reason you provide for, what would be a reason that the app offense doesn't also link to pragmatism?
Okay,
based on the terror dissent, it does seem to be somewhat headspace for what makes something pragmatic.
So I'm just making a point here that because you defend an absolute right to this privilege, so therefore it means you're making no exception. You're saying that this thing, this privilege is absolutely good, and pragmatism is saying that's bad because we need to look at different things.
Aren't you making an absolute claim that having an absolute privilege is bad though? Shouldn't?
Oh no,
if
I'm
it is
not.
true that an absolute privilege is good, then that seems like you should have an absolute privilege. That seems separate from the underlying truth.
Sorry, what is the question? Can you just rephrase it?
So, you say we have to be open to revision within our knowledge of facts about the world, but why does this indict just a particular policy that just doesn't include an exception for a thing? It seems like including an exception for a particular thing also requires an absolute claim that we need to accept.
The reason why you have this absolute right is because you perceive you perceive that journalistic privilege is always good. In no circumstance is it bad. So pragmatism is saying that's bad. So therefore, if that's not true, then there's no reason why we should have an absolute privilege.
Okay, so if I win that having an absolute privilege is valuable not because I'm viewing it as always good, but rather just through weighing comparison, does that then answer the question?
I don't understand what you mean by weighing comparison. It's no, it does not, because defending an absolute privilege it's just everything against pragmatism, because you're not looking at each different case on a case by case basis. Instead, you're just making generalizing claims here about how government is oppressive, how journalists are exposing them.
Okay, so if I show having an exception is bad, does that answer?
What do you mean?
So having the exception in the pick is bad, does that answer? Like the negative.
Is what do you mean it's bad?
If I show having the exception is bad, does that answer the negative? Like bad under different.
I don't understand. Like, I don't understand.
Okay, I'll start that. Ending prep at 3 minutes. Should be set. So the order is going to be starting on the NC on framework, and then since the terror dissat and the map security can kind of go together, I'm just going to read a couple of comments against both collectively, and then I'll go back to the app.
Okay,
So it's basically framework debate, the NC contention offense / dissat offense, and the app contention.
Okay, that's fine.
Judge ready? Okay, starting. Yeah, First, on the framework debate, you can separate the framework for empirical knowledge from this framework for normative claims, i.e. it is true that how we understand truth is through an incremental process, i.e. I know something's false and then I learn it, or I know something's true, or I think something is true, and then later I learn information that contradicts it, so I revise my current claims, and what the implication of those truth claims is something that's independently determined by the normative framework, i.e. the relevance of a certain claim, for example, about whether a British privilege would harm national security, even if we come to that through a particular epistemological process, what the implication of that from a normative standpoint would differ under different frameworks. For example, a Kant framework would not care about it, a util framework would, my framework cares somewhat, and their framework seems to care a lot, which means that you can separate the normative claims from the epistemological claims, which means they can't win this as a side constraint, but two, we don't engage in totalizing explanations, rather through a process open to change. We see that having absolute protection is bad, i.e. that we can separate the epistemological, so like on the contention office, we can separate the epistemological claim that I'm saying always having a, like, leaking is always good from the political or normative claim that having absolute protection is good for external reasons, for example, related to solvency or other reasons I'm about to get to. So yeah, there's nothing here. Also, they don't provide, also this framework doesn't make any sense. If you're operating under epistemic modesty, which you should, since we, according to them, we should never give full truth value to any particular framework as well, which is conceded on cross-examination, then you have to weigh the probability of their framework being true against the contention, amount of contention offense. And since they don't say, their framework doesn't seem to say that there's something particularly harmful, other than it's not consistent with the pragmatist epistemology, but not like it causes oppression or something in the relevant way, then the risk of offense on the AC is also a reason you can affirm, since, yeah. Okay, now on the, like, their stuff. Also on the net security pick, you engage in making that absolute claim. It's important to separate out the absolute truth claim and general claim of absolute prediction, which I've already partially explained, but just to explain in terms of the national security pick, they've also made the statement that always having an exception for national security is good, i.e. this is just turning into an ends-based debate that functionally is util or functionally under the EC, since my framework is consequentialist, which means the rest of the debate, it doesn't really matter which framework you're operating under. Now, without the privileged sources go to organizations, those sources like WikiLeaks, better that people revealed message sources who will face blowback for harming national security, Stevens 15. Lack of defined reports will keeps them from being able to guarantee source confidentiality. This made organizations like WikiLeaks the destination of choice for leakers. That's what can be seen in Israel with the law allows a gag order on any news source that potentially harms national security. The Israeli press routinely sends contribution notes to foreign news sources to avoid judicial scrutiny. The burden of having to go to court and argue for the right to publish stories, not that courts circumvent Israel's jurisdiction, not certain American use of foreign organizations is increasingly common. The American press has refrained from publishing stories when doing so truly poses a threat to national security. The New York Times not published any nuclear disaster stories. The request of the CIA rise away 3 years for national security concerns to subside for he publishes both the Times. Also withheld a story about the plans for Bay of Pigs invasion. Also a story about warrantless wiretapping. The American press are not blind or sympathetic to the occasional need for discretion to protect national security interests. Foreign analysts have no track record of responsibility, neither reports protection. Actually, for national security and law enforcement, pushing info into the hands of uncontrollable international operations, providing meaningful protection for American reports can take away the incentive to leak foreign sources and reduce risks to national security. For that to become the norm again, of course, you be able to guarantee confidentiality of their sources based on a uniform and clear federal borders privilege. The problem is that even if they're, since they included exception for national security, that actually ends up reducing the amount of national security that's provided. Since if there is an exception, then anyone who wants to engage in particular investigative reporting is just going to leak it to foreign sources where the exception no longer exists. They can be extrajudicial, so it's net better to have an absolute protection because it actually increases the amount of national security protections. Now there's the app. This is also independent offense since I turned the link on the dissat. You can extend the Jones 09 evidence, which provides that empirically there is cases of chilling effect, which means that people don't actually come forward about government abuse. Also, you can extend the Handman evidence, which indicates there have been cases of governmental abuse, also outweighs the cases. They don't provide any specific examples of like someone dying from a leaking of a national security secret, and they don't provide a specific example. Whereas we have cases of, for example, the Pentagon Papers helping curb the Vietnam War, which outweighs. Oh yeah, I didn't read the Davidson for her stuff. That's fine.
The order is the order is framework, then framework, counterplan. Oh, yeah, actually, framework, this, that, and case.
Correct, is that case?
Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Okay, overview on the round. Winning on substance, no matter which framework you evaluate this under, pragmatism or minimizing oppression, like I win both. So like, so for go back to the framework debate. So on the first argument, make that empirical is separate from normative. Again, like normative theory is based on our observation of like what is happening empirically. So like, there's no way we can separate the two. It doesn't really make sense to have one perception of truth and another completely different perception of morality. It doesn't make any sense. And then moving on. Moving on to second argument, my opponent says that app is open for a process of change. So like it's just saying that absolute privilege is good in this case. But like this doesn't really matter because I will show later that like absolute privilege is it's not even good in this case because of the national because of the kind of like the peace through net benefit of not having national security problems. And then moving on to and then it also extend. So on the third argument, saying that I have to make any direct weighing. So like extend the Papa's part, talking about how pragmatism is better able to resolve injustice than make criticism of oppression. So like the literary attack itself is a weighing. Like Papa's talked about how like the pragmatism controls the internal link to minimize oppression. So you extend that, and which means that the only way we can minimize oppression is through experimenting with different things. Like pragmatism is a better method. And then moving on to the counterplan. Moving on to the counterplan. So on the only my opponent read a turn of Stevens talking about how sources will just go to WikiLeaks if there's no privilege. So first, so people don't believe WikiLeaks as much as they believe like actual reporters from like a New York Times or something. So like there are like a bunch of stuff on WikiLeaks where they're not as harmful as like the things that are actually reported by reporters because those things are like actually hold some sort of authority. And then also moving on to the. You might did not answer my uniqueness. My main argument talking about how, sure, there are leaks in the status quo, but the Schoenfeld evidence thing under this ad talks about how like anonymous sources will like expose more government operation and will lead to bad intel and have just like in general put more burden on government than like so they have less resources to spend on national security. So like there's a net increase in like the leaks of secrets under app. So like I'll go to this app. So go to this extend Schoenfeld. Extend Schoenfeld. The link card talks about how anonymous sources is bad for government operation. And then extend Pinterger talking about how strong intel and like with more resources on national security, it makes it less likely for us to have a terrorist attack. And this is going to be the most important impact in the round because my opponent conceded in cross-examination that like if overseas war is like a very bad form of oppression, and so is terrorism, and it affects like my opponent will trigger terrorism and this outweighs in terms of first magnitude because it will affect like so many people, and then and also time frame because like because leaking of resources is going to like increase immediately and then that thus lead to terrorism. And moving on to the AC, extend the appellate, like under first advantage, extend appellate's card, talking about how this is a term, talking about how doing the act will only lead to government licensing. This is the most important offense because Because this essentially turns my opponent's case, which is based on how suppression of media is bad and more leaks will be good. Because this will even this also turns Jones talking about chilling effect, because this will lead to even more chilling effect. Because right now, like, if the government if the plan is passed and the government will license. Government will license journalists as they see you can, like you count a journalist and he doesn't. Therefore, there will actually be less information being disclosed about the government. This is actually good for the government to keep suppressing the media, which turns to Sonda impact. Because now the government decides who gets to publish and who doesn't, and then so there are a couple of places you can vote. So you can definitely vote on the frame. Under pragmatism, extend Terzi talk about how absolutism precludes any exception made for public interest, and this is enough offense under pragmatism, and Terzi is completely conceded to granting 100% strength of link on that. So you can vote of Terzi, and then also even if it's under structural violence, you can vote of Even if it's under structural violence, you can vote off Pintiger because the plan is going to lead to more leaks of national security information, which leads to terrorism attack, which is the worst form of oppression that can possibly happen. You can also vote off Saperstein, the counter plan, pretty much because the counter plan competes for net benefit, and I gain access to all of their advantages, except we make an exception for national security, national securities. So the counter plan and then at last you can vote on appellees, because even if we do the act, this will only lead to more chilling effect, even less information being disclosed and government becoming even more oppressive, which is bad under both his and my framework.
I'll take her in maybe 50 seconds. Okay, what's up? I've been making a doc, but there's no cars in it. It's just me typing.
I mean, if you can send this.
Okay, sure, I'll send it. It's not word for word, though. It's basically.
Yeah, that's fine. I just like to have them.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry, I fixed it. Okay. Okay, it also has a summary of what you said.
I don't have the
Okay, that's
So for my
it's called 2AR.
okay, then I oh, there we go.
So the top of it has a 2NR header, so that I was just
Oh, yeah.
what you said, and then the 2 other sections of that stuff. Josh, good? Okay, good? Okay. Order is going to be, so starting on the framework on the NC contention, then delineating where there's actually offense for either way, and then, so this will end up on like the NAT security stuff, basically. Okay, starting in 3, 2, 1. You can extend the argument that the framework debate is moot because both of them end up collapsing into end-based theory. This is because of the argument they made on the AAC, which is that that pragmatism is just a way to reduce oppression, but if it's a way to reduce oppression, then they're both collapsing into end-based. But you can also extend the contention argument I made against them, which is that they're also creating an absolute truth claim by saying that we always have to have national security pick. They don't even answer this argument, which means that the contention offense under a pure pragmatist framework is non-unique, which means you always have to be using an epistemic modesty framework, if only so that you can resolve the round in some way. Okay, so that's the pragmatism. Contention is basically pragmatism, doesn't matter anymore. Now we're just focused on national security. There's basically 2 pieces of offense for the negative. One of them is the arguments about national security exception in the terror dissent, and then the other argument is the Appleist evidence they read against the AC. The problem is they don't kick out of the pick they read, which means that all the case terms against the app, like the Appleist, for example, are non-unique for like similar reasons that the contention under pragmatism was non-unique, which means even though they've turned the chilling effect, it doesn't matter because they've also turned the chilling effect on their own side because they're just defending the pick. Which means that the only other piece of offense now you can evaluate the round under is national security. So if I show you I'm winning the national security argument, I win. But even if you don't buy this whole like they didn't kick the pick, which means they linked to their own case turns thing, I'll just concede their weighing argument that the terrorism dissent and the national security stuff outweighs other things on magnitude, which means that weighing analysis takes out any relevance that the appellee's evidence has, i.e. if I win national security, even if they had kicked the pick, it was just like a terror dissent, I would still be winning the round if I win national security. So now I'm going to win. So now we can go to the evidence I read in the 1 yard. One, you can extend the Stevens 15 evidence about how this has happened in Israel, for example, and they implemented a rule that prevented the leaking of information about national security. The card explicates that what happened is that journalists or confidential sources and whistleblowers just started providing their information to foreign journalists in order to circumvent the rules, which means that having a national security exception is just going to push people in order to go into overseas countries where they will be able to disclose their information to WikiLeaks, or to journalists that are WikiLeaks but just aren't in the United States, which means we can't do anything about them because we don't have jurisdiction over them. Also, they say WikiLeaks doesn't matter. This might be a turn of public trust of the information, but it's not relevant to the terrorism dissent, because under the terrorism dissent, it's just a matter of whether terrorists trust the information. Since they're going to try to avoid risk, even if they're not like totally sure if WikiLeaks is actually telling them the correct information, if WikiLeaks discloses national security information, the terrorists are probably going to respond to that, if only to minimize their chances of being caught, which means that there's a net harm to voting for the pick from creating the exception in regards to national security. You can extend the explication I give of how this actually makes it a reason to prefer an absolute privilege, because under an absolute privilege, you no longer have the problem of the status quo and the problem faced by having a national security exception, where sources would rather go to places that are less accountable. Rather, we should have them go to like New York Times, who's willing to not publish damaging info, which means they have the strongest link to national security. Good round.